What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Shockwave Rocket Launcher because a lot of people are rating this as the best mobility item in the game right now. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think of the Shockwave Rocket Launcher and if you think it is the best mobility item in the game right now. So if you guys were unaware, since the addition of the mythic and exotic weapons in the season, you can now purchase the Shockwave Rocket Launcher in the black market outside Crime City. And as the name implies, this is a rocket launcher that gives you a shockwave-like effect. And a lot of people have been saying this is even better than shockwaves and the best mobility item in the game right now for a few reasons. One of the most important is going to be that it goes off rocket ammo rather than, an item that you need to actually consistently find. And since it goes off rocket ammo, you can basically carry 13 shockwaves if you have this fully loaded with max reserve ammo. And just because of the nature of how the game works out, you can probably get a good refresh off like pretty much any elimination you get in the game, because a lot of players find rockets throughout the course of the game and they just kind of go into their inventory, but a lot of people aren't using rockets consistently. So most eliminations you get, you're going to be able to get either max rockets off or just like a good amount of rockets. And that is really nice because if you're comparing it to shockwaves, not everybody you eliminate is going to have shockwaves, and certainly not everybody you eliminate is basically going to be walking around with max shockwaves for you. So the fact that you can carry basically double and be guaranteed a refresh on pretty much any elimination is a pretty big deal, and it's a pretty big advantage that the Shockwave Rocket Launcher has. And then another aspect of this that a lot of people like is how far it can send you with just one rocket. The distance you get, either vertically or laterally, is much greater with this Shockwave Rocket Launcher than just regular Shockwave. So you can carry more than double and they send you further. That seems like a huge deal, and this is like cut and dry, just obviously better. And that is how a lot of people look at it. But personally, I still prefer Shockwaves over this Shockwave Rocket Launcher, even though I think the Shockwave Rocket Launcher is very good. Don't get me wrong. This item is by no means bad. I still would rather carry regular Shockwave. For starters, with the Rocket Launcher, it goes off rockets, and that's one of its main advantages. But I also don't really have that hard of a time finding Shockwaves or staying topped off on Shockwaves this season, especially with them being added to the black markets. If this Rocket Launcher was in from the get-go, I think the first few days or weeks, whatever, the initial period of this season, I would have had more value on this. But the fact that there's shockwaves in the black markets now, I feel like anytime I'm low or getting low, I can just make my way there. And sure, there is a point in the game where the black markets are no longer going to be in zone. I typically do try to get topped off on shocks before that happens. And so I'll have 6 shockwaves pretty much always for the end game guaranteed. And then also the fact that other people have the ability to purchase shockwaves from the black market just means more and more of my eliminations are going to be carrying shockwaves. And then I should be able to get more refreshes throughout the game than normal because of how this season is currently set up. So one of the main advantages is that capacity. And while that is true, it isn't as big of a deal to me as it seems to be to other people. I also don't really just spam an item like this just for traveling around the map. The way I look at my mobility items in Fortnite is I usually have one for more just like general traveling, and then one that I like more for fighting. And I think the Shockwave Rocket Launcher is better for just regular traveling than the shockwaves, but that's not really what I use my shockwaves for. And I carry something like the rocket drill for more mobility, and then also use cars a lot for more general mobility. And so, yeah, that's one reason why I don't think it's as big of a deal. The Shockwave Rocket Launcher also won't send you through walls like regular shockwaves will, which is something I take advantage of like a good amount. It's definitely not something that happens every fight or even every game, but I feel like there are several situations where I like bursting through walls to fight people that are inside of buildings hiding, or people who went in there to heal. And the fact that I am making a chaotic situation occur and I'm kind of prepared for it usually results in me winning the fight and the enemy being caught off guard. And this is something that I really like doing. But even if you aren't actively trying to do this with shockwaves, the fact that it can't break structures or can't send you through structures can be a bit of a problem. If you're in a building and let's say you get shotgunned and you need to just get out of there, If you have shockwaves, you just throw the shock and you're out, as long as the building can be broken, and you're good to go. With the shockwave rocket launcher, if you try to do that, you wouldn't actually get sent through the building, and that can cost you in some situations. Also, any sort of like fighting around trees, if you just throw the shockwave down, you're going to be good to go. But the shockwave rocket launcher, you might just get caught on the tree and then not actually end up going anywhere, which would be pretty problematic for you in that situation. This is more of a minor thing, but it's still something that I prefer with shockwaves. With how both of these weapons work, your character's position in relation to where the explosion happens really matters. And so with the shockwave rocket launcher, if you want to go forward, you kind of have to turn around and look backwards and then shoot yourself and then turn once you're in the air. And this isn't the biggest deal for some people, especially mouse and keyboard players. It's easier to make that quick adjustment on mouse and like flick. But on controller, I'm not the biggest fan of this. And I just think shockwaves are much easier and much more convenient to make work because there's kind of a delayed explosion. The way I often use shockwaves if I want to just go forward is I look down and throw it while walking forward. And then by the time it goes off, I'm already looking in the direction I want to go. And that's so much easier to make happen in a chaotic situation. Like in a fight, if I need to push somebody, pull out shocks, look down, throw it, and then walk forward and I'm good to go. Whereas the shockwave launcher, having to like full turn my character and shoot it and then turn back, it's not the biggest problem in the world, but to me, it's just less fluid and less convenient than how shockwaves are. I think also having to reload this weapon after every single use can be a problem in some situations. So a lot of times I will beam somebody with my AR, and I'll have a clip of this playing on screen right now. I'll beam somebody with my AR and then want to push them and then shockwave and then reload as I'm shockwaving, right? And then I land on them, my gun is loaded, and I can fight. With the shockwave rocket launcher, since you have to reload it after every shot, you're somewhat incentivized to reload it while you're in the air. And if you don't do that, then you potentially run into a problem where you're landing on somebody and then your mobility item isn't ready to be used. And this would be problematic if the enemy uses shockwaves themselves to reposition as you're pushing them. So you wouldn't be able to continue chasing them since you need to reload the launcher. Or in the clip I played on screen, I end up getting third-partied, and since I needed to reload my drum gun, I didn't have my shockwave rocket launcher ready to go when the third party ended up pulling up on me. And I was able to get out of there with the rocket drill, but I think if the enemy player had been more aware of what was going on or better at the game, I wouldn't have survived that situation as easily, and the fact that my shockwaves needed to be reloaded would have been a problem. Like the fact that I can throw a shockwave and then not have to worry about it being ready to use when I come back to it later on, like when I go back to that inventory slot, I think is a big deal. And this isn't something that would matter to everybody. I feel like I'm just pretty terrible at reloading and like keeping my guns loaded, especially when streaming. I'm often paying attention to like several different things at once. But just the fact that I can pull out shockwaves and they're always going to be ready to go, I think is a nice thing. And the situation I kind of outlined of like immediately getting third party because I needed to reload my AR, that is something specific, but that is something that happens a decent amount. Pretty much anytime I get AR beams on somebody, I'm shockwaving on them and then reloading my AR as I travel just to like save as much time and give the enemy as little time to heal and like be prepared for me to push them as possible. So that is a very niche situation, but it's something that happens to me a good amount because of how I play the game. And then also going further, I feel like isn't always ideal. Like this is one thing that I've seen pop up a bunch with this weapon is people are like, it's better because it sends you further. And there's certain, or like it sends you further. And that's how people judge the mobility item is how far you go. And there's benefits to that. Sure. There's also times where you don't need to go as far. And I feel like in a lot of fights that happen in the game in kind of close medium range, I end up sending myself further than I actually want with the shockwave rocket launcher. And some of that could definitely come down to the fact that I'm not as good with it as I am with shockwave grenades. And in a few weeks, maybe I'll feel differently about this. It still kind of stands that the weapon sends you further. That's just kind of how it works. So there's going to be times where you overshoot yourself. And I feel like a lot of the more relevant kind of medium range fights that happen in this game, the amount of mobility I get off the shockwave rocket launcher is just more than I would actually want. And again, not everybody is going to feel that way, but that is how I feel about the item. And then the final thing I want to touch on is that you definitely draw more attention to yourself using the shockwave rocket launcher. Since there's only one of it on the map and a lot of people rate it really highly, there's going to be times where people focus you solely because you have this item. And we kind of already talked about how it sends you further and it sends you higher. While you're traveling in the sky because of this, people are going to be looking out to beam you. And even if it is like a somewhat subconscious thing, I feel like this weapon being a one-time thing, I feel like this kind of happens with every mythic weapon. You do draw more attention to yourself. If I hear people fighting and one of them has a drum gun, I'm wanting to eliminate that drum gun player. Or if I know somebody has the medallion, I want to eliminate that player. And I feel like the Shockwave Rocket Launcher is no different. You do draw more attention to yourself. And the fact that you're sending yourself further and higher kind of gives people more opportunities to potentially beam you. And they might just keep chasing because they know you have the special rocket launcher that they really want. But that is going to be it for this video. Kind of negative towards the Shockwave Rocket Launcher, but that's mainly just because I feel like my opinion of it is different than most of the communities. It's a great mobility item. It's very good. I won several games with it, but I feel much more comfortable and much more confident with shockwaves in my inventory, and the kind of ammo concerns of shockwaves, like staying topped off on them, really isn't a problem that I run into as much as others seem to this season. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.